would like to call upon Ms. Archana Mittal from VMM to give us an overview of the organization and the report on maintenance laws.
Thank you, Pranay. We are truly honored from VMM to be hosted by RV University and esteemed panelists. Very quickly, I'll start the overview of Vasavya and the work we have done since last 54 years. Vasavya Mahila Mandali is an acronym for Vastavikta Samdrishti Vyaktitvam, which is in reality, which gives social outlook and stands for individual development. We are a 54 years Gandhian women-led secular NGO. Thematic areas of work are health and nutrition, education, livelihood, gender-based violence, and environment, which is cross-cutting. So, under these thematic areas, we are fulfilling SDG goals, which has been sanctioned by, mandated by WHO, and we have been doing this, creating this ecosystem right from the beginning till date. What we have noticed in our work for, whether it's an individual women, whether it's group or from community, individuals undergo a lot of low self-esteem. They are acceptance of gender stereotypes, fear of facing stigmatization, whether it's related to their hygiene, menstrual hygiene, whether it's related to divorce, whether it's related to being widow. And the reason is the stakeholders from their family having patriarchal mindsets, seeing girl as liability till date in 2023, and fear of safety of girl child. That's why early marriages are still on in a lot of states. Community-wise, they still prefer son, though government has banned medical tests related to it, but still this thing is going on. Some of them still want daughters. We have cases till date where educated households still prefer sons after having 4 daughters, 5 daughters. And they don't protest for violence against women, which is an underlying, you can say, which is the secret underbelly of the society, where people keep quiet because of stigmatization. We are a holistic country, but still we are seen as self-centered society, which is deprived of values and ethics, because till date, lot of, if we see around the world, every 3rd woman which is being abused comes from India. This is the data which we fetched from NFHS and NCRT. From the systemic level, when we see since our last, over the period of researches since last over 30 years, there are policy gaps, there is an implementation efficiency gap, lack of monitoring is there by all the government departments and systems, usage of tech is still a question mark, and gender insensitivity is biggest gap, because of which things are not changing. VMA has taken a lot of initiatives. Mahila Mitra, which is a women's social initiative, which has really been applauded by the state government of Andhra. VMM also does a lot of community service counseling, mentoring, empowering women right from the problems to solution. We have also committed and started a campaign, 1 million to commit for stopping violence against women. And support this, lot of research and documentation has been done from VMM side. Role of Vasavya Mahila Mandali is single, empowering women through maintenance law in India, because this is one pillar of democracy which is the most powerful, and we saw to fill that gap, during COVID times we could see that domestic violence in households across the society, across the geography of country increased like anything. It was during that time we started this effort to create research and a document which showed the gap in the system and in the society. Our endeavor was to promote women's right and access to maintenance in India. We all know the law. Laws of India, our country, are very powerful. We are just sticking to one. Section 125 of CRPC, which is century old. The said section is a measure of social justice and especially enacted to protect women and children the said section is read as under. 125 Order of Maintenance of Wives, Children and Parents. This is what the law states. To support the law and the system, VMM took initiative to create a study report. The premise of the study is, despite the provision in laws, women continue to struggle to receive maintenance. The study highlighted the issues, challenges faced, including legal, financial, societal, family and health. The role of Vasavya Mandali in this was to have pan-India study which was conducted, and the research report was published on maintenance among women in marital discord. This report is available on website. We saw out of 700 district courts and with 84,000 signatures from change.org that there were 3,70,801 maintenance cases filed pan-India through the two financial years 2018 and 2020. Of this study, only 41,934 execution petitions were filed. We also created a public petition related to maintenance law. This is still running with 84,000 signatures, and we would like to have support of RB University, its students, to give more weightage to signatures so that we can make it amplify the voice of women who are undergoing this distress. The suggestions which came across from the ground, from the insiders who have undergone this, from the lawmakers, from the police and from retired judges, we took qualitative analysis, you can say questionnaire to lot of influencers in the society. And the suggestions came in this form. Maintenance Act to be framed by aligning different sections in various laws such as 125 CRPC, the Prevention of Women from Domestic Violence Act, family laws of various religions, to bring in uniformity and speedy disposal of cases. And the major gap we found was that there was no national registry of domestic abusers and offenders. The data is not there. That is why there are gaps in policy level changes. Suggestions again to combat the solution: streamline of alimony, interim maintenance, final settlement procedures. And the solution was also coming from, tap the EPF sources, tap government funds, where the woman who's undergoing the challenge of getting maintenance for 5 years, 10 years, at least she has some respite and gets life of dignity. Suggestions also were that we should use existing one-stop centers, violence cells, legal cell authorities with our homes to be brought under one roof, because women has to run from one place to another in one umbrella to have better coordination with police and achieve seamless issue resolution. Suggestions also came that we should have well-coordinated monitoring system to track the maintenance cases, which should be created by police department at each police unit to ensure better focus on issue of summons, warrants and follow-ups. Technology can be a big enabler in this. Again, for women who have to literally be on streets or sometimes has to be on the mercy of her relatives, friends, society, the fund should be created by Government of India to support women fighting maintenance cases. So for this, VMM has taken initiative to create a technical tool which will help us create National Registry of Domestic Violence Offenders, which is still in nascent stage, pilot stage. We have used cases in them, where we are storing the real-time data depending on the location, on the women-centric, her identification using technology, and where all her evidences get stored at the cloud server, which can be later used in trial courts for evidence creation reports, which helps in strengthening the system and policy level changes, which helps courts of law, because most of the women, they are not able to provide evidences and their evidences get destroyed by the people in their family. And for this report, I am really thankful to Dr. Keerthi taking up this initiative. Vasavya support team, G. Ramanujaya, P. Subhashini, K. Vijaya, and other team members who went during COVID times through RTI to courts to collect the data. Thank you so much.
Now, before we move on to the panel discussion, I would like to introduce the panelists. Firstly, we have Dr. Amar Pandey. Dr. Amar Pandey is a 1989 batch Karnataka cadet IPS officer who held various posts such as Director General of Police in Karnataka. He has a PhD in Refugee Studies from NLSIU, Bangalore. He was awarded the President of India Police Medal for Gallantry, the President of India Police Medal for Meritorious Service, President of India Police Medal for Distinguished Service, and United Nations Medal for Service of Peace. Next, we have Dr. Y.S.R. Murthy. Dr. Y.S.R. Murthy assumed the charge as first Vice-Chancellor of RV University, Bangalore, and is the founding Dean of School of Law. As a former civil servant from 1985 batch of IAS and Allied Services, he held many responsible and sensitive assignments, including the National Human Rights Commission, Prime Minister's Office, President's Secretariat, and Cabinet Secretary. Between 2009 and 2020, Dr. Y.S.R. Murthy steered the O.P. Jindal University during its rapid expansion phase. He even served as the registrar in the top leadership team. He contributed to its rise in international rankings and becoming an institution of eminence. Dr. Y.S.R. Murthy holds a bachelor's and master's degree in statistics from the University of Madras, MA degree in human rights from the School of London, and a PhD degree from Tamil Nadu Dr. Ambedkar Law University, Chennai. We also have on the panel Ms. Ashwini Obulesh. Ashwini is an advocate practicing from before the High Court of Karnataka. Ms. Ashwini has a BA LLB Honours degree and LLM degree from the National Law School of India, University, Bangalore. She is a recipient of the Vikram Singh Gold Medal for Young Leader of the Year during her BA LLB Honours, which was in 2013, and the Sitaram Jindal Foundation Gold Medal during her LLM at the convocation ceremony of National Law School of India, University. She has worked in diverse legal arenas such as corporate, policy, public policy, litigation, and legal activism over the past decade. Ashwini has also been associated with several women and child rights based organizations and has worked on their projects in various capacities, such as legal advisor, advocate, volunteer, etc. Ms. Ashwini has recently started Dhwani Legal Trust, an organization that aspires to provide legal aid, especially to persons from poor and marginalized communities, thereby empowering them to establish their rights. Lastly, we have Mr. Pritam Ghosh. Professor Pritam Ghosh has joined the School of Law, RV University, in the capacity of Assistant Professor. He has completed his BBA LLB from Symbiosis Law School, Pune, followed by Masters of Laws (LLM) in International Law and Human Rights from NUJS, Kolkata. He has total 13 years of work experience combining industry research and academics, which includes a brief stint such as legal editor in LexisNexis, Butterworth's Publications, Gurgaon. He also has been a co-investigator in research projects initiated by various national and international bodies such as United Nations Development Programme and the National Commission for Women. He recently defended his thesis for private international family law at NLSIU, Bangalore. I would also like to introduce our moderator, Dr. Keerthi. Dr. Keerthi is a chain maker, trendsetter, and a victim-turned-motivator for the social norms and attitudes. Dr. Keerthi has served 47 years of experience in social development sector. She is spearheading VMM as the president since August 2018. She is a multitasker with great skills in fundraising, administration, advocacy, networking, and research. She is the recipient of of more than 10 awards, including Best Citizen Award from Vijayawada City Police. She is a UN Women Femme top speaker. She is among 5 people identified by the UK government in a research study conducted by Liverpool University on the developing global policies and programs with survivor engagement. Dr. Keerthi is the only one from India. Now I would like to invite Dr. Keerthi to take over.
Thank you so much. It's my pleasure to welcome all the panelists, and not waiting further, let me go through after Archana's that what is the current stage of this reformation of the maintenance laws. We have done a research, as you have already seen the recommendations. So based on that, we have shared it to many members of parliament and also met them and explained the need to speak about it in the parliament, to amend the maintenance laws, which are of centuries old. So that's why it went into the notice of the Prime Minister also, and a committee is formed in the Ministry of Home Affairs, and they called us to submit the policy, procedures and evidence how the maintenance law to be. And Vasavya Mahila Mandali has already submitted, keeping in view the survivors or the victims, the long journey of the struggle in the judicial proceedings, and also the other stakeholders in the current maintenance laws, like police, advocates, and how the family is also suffering, and how the children are dropping from the school, unable to pay the rentals and all those things. So the idea which came out is to conduct the panel discussions and sensitize the different stakeholders in various parts of India. The first panel discussion was held in Delhi in March. Almost every month we are conducting one panel discussion in one of the cities in India. And the second panel discussion was held in Bhubaneswar. And this is the third panel discussion which we are now going to hear from all of you. And I'll tell you that what are the policy, procedure and evidences BMM has suggested to Ministry of Home Affairs to amend it. As you have seen, the current procedures are investigative mode, going into the courts. Number of years the woman has to shuttle in between the home, workplace and the court. So what we suggested is a committee to be formed with a quasi-judicial powers, where the district magistrates can head it, or whomever the magistrate they appoint, and the district collector will be part of it, and a woman who is having an experience in dealing these issues. So it's going to be an inquiry only, not the investigation. So that's why what we suggested, the timelines also, it is 60 days to be taken up to get the interim report, and maximum 180 days to come with the final report and make the woman to have comfortable and to lead her life with the dignity and respect. So this is what now we are going with it, and with all the experience and the richness of the hall, we will go with the panel discussion, and each panelist will speak about 7 to 10 minutes, and then floor is open to the questions, so that the panelists also will give their opinions and also how to go ahead, that we can think of it. Thank you so much. We are calling first. Let me go ahead first calling with the host and also the collaborator with Vasavya Mahila Mandali, RB University, because we are very thankful and collaborating with the different academic institutions to take the part in it and in changing the law. So I request Professor Dr. Murthy to give his opinions with regard to the reformation of the maintenance laws. Thank you so much.
Good morning. Before I take up this question, and I want to make a few preliminary remarks. Few months back, we signed a MOU with Vasavya Mahila Mandali, and this is the first activity we are doing in collaboration. And Vasavya Mahila Mandali is doing wonderful work at the grassroots level and trying to make a difference to the lives of women, children who are in distress, and we are really proud of our partnership, and we are also delighted to host Dr. Amar Pandey, who has many decades of work experience at the grassroots level and at the state level and at the international level in the United Nations. He saw action in Bosnia and Herzegovina and also at Sierra Leone, and he has he's also a senior academic, having done his PhD at NLS Bangalore, and he's written a lot of books also, which have been published by such reputed authors as Thomson Writers. And thank you very much for accepting an invitation. And Mr. Ashwini has been practicing in the High Court, and she's leading an important organization called WANI, and which is supporting the women in distress, women who are facing domestic violence. We're really privileged to have you with us today. And so now let me take up your question. Though our Constitution, the International Human Rights Conventions promise the full range of human rights to everyone, regardless of any distinctions, yet in practice we see a big gap. You look at the situation of women alone, their social, economic and political status is not at the same level with men, and they face many practical challenges right from birth, starting from we live in a patriarchal society, and there's a discrimination which often starts from womb, which goes on till tomb, and there's son bias, and everyday papers we read about dowry-related harassment, dowry-related deaths, and with such alarming regularity. And in addition, there's a lack of economic independence, then domestic violence, and we also encounter abusive marriages, and then which often leave women without access to justice. In our country, legal literacy is very low, and with the result that women are unable to assert and secure their rights. And these challenges are compounded by the legal system with protracted and expensive legal battles which last several years, and there are long delays, and women do not get justice. The preamble of the Constitution proclaims social, economic and political justice as a very important ideal, and so at the core of the issue is women's access to justice, particularly those who are claiming for maintenance. Look at the children, their own access to health and access to education. These are all important challenges. I saw the research report presented by Ms. Archana Mittal. In that report, there was a 2-year pan-India study you conducted, and the base of RTI you collected data. And if you look at the 370,000 cases which have been filed for maintenance, less than 5% of cases interim orders have been passed, and only little over 10% of the cases execution petitions have been filed. So there's a big and large gap, and so there's an urgent need for reformation of maintenance laws in India, because at the moment it is not serving the needs of women victims, it is not protecting their rights. These are my preliminary observations.
Thank you so much. Can I ask you one or two questions?
Yeah.
Keeping in view your experience, can you tell that there are a lot of gaps in the current laws? So what will be the ideal situation to go ahead in the reformation of the maintenance laws to uphold the human rights?
So based on if you look at the number of cases filed under Domestic Violence Act or under Section 125 of CRPC, etc., the gaps are known. The women are not getting justice on account of protracted delays, which often last for many years. And then there are counter cases filed by men. There are sometimes there are character assassination, and the process itself ends up as a punishment. So some of the solutions could be like reforming the current policies and procedures, laying down timelines for disposal of cases, and also instituting a fund for supporting victims, even getting them legal aid. Particularly, we need to keep the core the victims from economically and weaker sections. There are people who can engage expensive lawyers and fight for themselves, but on the other hand, there are people who are unable to take full records of. So the courts, the judicial mechanism should fast track such cases of people from economically weaker sections. In addition to the court processes, we need to also look at the alternative dispute resolution mechanisms. For example, is there any other way we can tap the ADR mechanisms, like particularly the mediation centers, and then instead of going in for protracted legal battle, which is in the interest of neither side, there's a lot of potential there, and this talking about the accountability part, in case if there should be a proper oversight by the higher judiciary about the functioning of the let's say the family courts or the lower courts, where often these maintenance petitions are filed. In fact, there is in the government system there is an annual performance appraisal. In fact, in the appraisal of the judicial officers as well, there should be what you call an assessment done about how gender sensitive that particular officer is, or has been, or also about the disposal of cases. We need to rethink. In fact, today you cannot have a system where one can petition is kept pending for years together without justice. So there are many ways. In fact, we need to have a more robust mechanism for oversight of the by the higher judiciary. And these are some of my suggestions.
One more way down.
Last we'll have a question and session. Thank you so much, and I'll come back to you later. Now I request Dr. Amar Pandey, keeping in view his long experience and also in the current maintenance law section 125 CRPC, the police are also one of the part where they have to play an effective role to bring a kind of a ease for the woman. So now I request Dr. Amar Pandey to give his views. Thanks.
Thank you very much. And at the outset, I would like to express my deep sense of gratitude to Dr. Murthy and all the concerned who thought of me to be a part of this. So I would like to begin with a kind of admission that in my professional career, though I dealt with the crime against women and children very substantially, nevertheless, to be a part of a gathering like this to share my views is the first opportunity for me. So coming back to maintenance laws, which essentially begins with CRPC section 125, the very fact that in India CRPC contains a section 125 provision where maintenance is considered to be given to women, children and parents by me. So it's essentially, this section is, it has divided the family, and the role of the adversary is played by the husband, and it is presumed that mostly the victims, because of maybe, as we all know, and Ms. Mittal also mentioned in a research report, that lack of education, awareness, source of income and economic viability. So for women, children and his parents, these conditions are very common. So the husband, who is supposed to be the earning member, has to fend and take care of all the other three segments of the family. And unfortunately, the failing family, this is a very real problem. Now we find that section 125, along with other maintenance laws like Domestic Violence Act, Hindu Marriage Act, then we have Indian Divorce Act for Christians and Parsis, and the Muslim Women Divorce Act, which came in 1986 after Shahjahan case was kind of overturned by the parliament. So in view of all these maintenance laws, what we find very significant is that there are umpteen number of judgments which have qualified all the cases in favor of, mostly in favor of the women who has been victimized or parents who are victimized, and they have upheld the situation as they have classified the situations in terms of fundamental rights, in terms of equality, in terms of need for egalitarianism within family, in terms of human rights. So though I would like to emphasize this part a little more. What exactly we mean when we say that the maintenance laws are part of human rights? I think a large number of people have not understood the implications of human rights. If the legal position is raised to the level of human rights, then what implications it would have for society, for the implementing agencies, for the stakeholders. So this whole thing needs to be really understood in clear perspective, with proper implications and its scope and significance, which we have been missing. And a large number of us are missing that part. So I would like to explain a bit of this, that how human rights enhances the position of maintenance laws and how it can be scaled to a level where most of the failures and most of the impediments that you came across and you mentioned in your research and in your speech can be overcome very effectively. So, and we must appreciate Justice Mishra and Gopal, who for the first time in Bowen versus Nina case, for the first time they said that it's a part of human rights, because justice was delayed for an unreasonably long time, and when the final verdict came, it had already taken some 13 years or 14 years. Professor should correct me if I'm wrong anywhere. So for the first time, it has been declared as a human rights. And human rights, I need not explain, Prof. Murthy also has required degree for it is something which is inborn, inherent, needs to be protected, inalienable, and there's a whole list of special adjectives attached to this word human rights. So this all gets included in support of the victim. Now here, human rights is always on the highest pedestal compared to any other social equality, economic equality, and whatever are the things that we actually aim to achieve with the maintenance law. So human rights come right on top of the whole thing, and it needs to be understood in that perspective. Now, a human person has to be protected. The moment we talk of maintenance laws being raised to the status of a human right, then the human entity has to be protected in its entirety. When I say in its entirety, it means that not just the physical and financial integrity, but in terms of dignity, emotions, life, environment, livelihood, mental conditions. So you can go on adding everything that makes a person as a human person who can have his wishes fulfilled in the sense any other human person's aspirations, expectations, and desires to be fulfilled. By whom? By the state. So if the person's right is against the state, so the moment a right is exalted to the status of a human right, it is no more against the husband alone. Husband he gets relegated to a very minor position. Now this right is scaled up to be the right against the state. A woman has the state not just as a protector by enacting a law and then leaving it at that and leaving it to the stakeholders to implement that law. It's not just that. The moment you say human rights, then it gets exalted that the state itself is a guarantor of the protection of a person's human entity, human self, and in its entire gamut of events have to be incorporated into that. So whichever about 20-30 points Ms. Mittal you mentioned, all that is naturally comes to be covered the moment it is declared as a human right. So we have to appreciate this part of maintenance very effectively. Now we come that once you declare human rights and then we say that the state has to be the protector and the guarantor of the law and to protect the victims. Yes, Ashwini, you should tell me if I go wrong. Okay? You're a professor and a practitioner both. So the concept of state responsibility comes in. Ms. Kajal sent me a question yesterday. Said, sir, we are going to ask you a question on state responsibility. I don't know, I haven't met her as yet, Ms. Kajal. So you're there? Yeah. So thank you for using this word state responsibility, and it set me thinking that then you are really taking me to a much deeper level of maintenance law rather than just a maintenance and a husband-wife issue. So the moment we say that the state responsibility, I don't know how many of you are actually aware of the word state responsibility.
Yes.
It's not just the responsibility of the state, it is not just that. State responsibility is a very, very deep word. And to be honest with you, academically, this word has never been used in municipal laws. Municipal law is like the laws of India, or laws of the country. So we call it municipal law, doesn't mean it's a municipality law. Municipal laws are like law of the domestic law, law of the country, as opposed to the international law. So state responsibility has never been used in municipal law. Hasn't been used.
No.
Is there any example? Anybody can share an example? I would be delighted. But to my best of my knowledge, this responsibility is yet to be used. So it's a part of international law. And being part of international law, where all the states undertake to carry out certain duties and responsibilities towards humanity. And certain characteristics are there, like laws against aggression, genocide, discrimination, racial discrimination, and slavery. And these kind of very standardized international violations of human persons which have been practiced and experienced in the past have come to be recognized that prevention and prohibition of all such human rights violations will fall under the state responsibility, where state suo motu is responsible to ensure prohibition and protection against such violations of human rights, which are also, somewhere close to what we call the humanitarian rights. Okay? Now, thank you, Ms. Kajal, for giving me this idea where it set me thinking that how we can incorporate the state responsibility, expand its meaning and scope, and bring it in domestic laws. How can we do that where state per se has to be made to feel that state is accountable? Suo motu. Nobody has to knock at the door of a judicial officer or a police officer. The very moment maintenance law cases are brought before the state, then state takes over from there and ensures till that final justice is delivered. That is the meaning and responsibility of the state when one of its, or like the highest court, has exalted the status of maintenance laws to the status of human rights. This is where the bigger meaning is involved. And I can think of that how it can be. Normally it is the first special rapporteur was Roberto Ego, who was given the responsibility to define state responsibility. So maybe VNN can be the first special rapporteur of the Supreme Court of India and be made to define the state responsibility as far as maintenance laws are concerned within. You will be setting a trend, not just for the country but for the whole world, where there are many countries where maintenance are not really an important and relevant issue. But there are many countries where it's a very, very important issue, especially subcontinent definitely, because our culture is very similar. So we can be the lead country in incorporating state responsibility and its scope and application in domestic laws. One tool, one mechanism, which I must share with you, and I don't miss an opportunity to share that, because I find it perhaps the most relevant mechanism whenever we talk of state responsibility. I don't know how many of you have heard the term erga omnes. Erga omnes. Erga omnes means owe to all. Oh, means like you are responsible for everybody. You are responsible for everybody. You owe it to all.
How is that?
O-W-E-O. Erga is E-R-G-A.
Yes.
It's a Latin word. O-M-N-E-S. Erga omnes. You are responsible to all. A state is responsible to all. A judge is responsible to all. So this is something which is irrespective of one's existence in terms of race, sex, gender, age, anything. So this is again another beauty of classifying, thanks to Justice Mishra and Gopal Gowda. They wouldn't have realized what they're saying. But perhaps they say it because they didn't elaborate in their judgment. They just say that it's human rights. So the moment we talk of human rights, then the principle of erga omnes comes into play. The moment we bring it, we align it with kind of state responsibility. Okay? You owe it to all. You are responsible to all. And this means that irrespective of anything, the moment a maintenance case comes, the maintenance case status should be raised to the level of a principle of erga omnes, where state is responsible by taking upon itself the responsibility for not just one woman whose case has come up before the state, but it's taking over the responsibility on behalf of all the women existing or potential victims. At the same time, assuring the 50% of the population, India we are slightly less, not exactly 50. So it's 993, something like that. Not exactly 50%, but still quite substantial. Assuring the 50% of the country's population that you need not worry. So that's principle of erga omnes, and it is there's a very famous judgment of Barcelona traction case between Belgium and Spain, which was decided by International Court of Justice, and International Court of Justice for the first time used this Latin word and developed it into a legal definition and elaborated all the circumstances around erga omnes and made it mandatory and binding for all the countries of the world with respect to certain violations against humanity. A similar experiment can be exercised within the country where we have many states are there. They are not sovereigns, but nevertheless they are independent, and the laws are implementation of law, and judiciary functions under their overall command and control. So a nation can think of use of such a mechanism of erga omnes to assure the 50% of its population, which is countries like the size of almost like a continent, and many of our states are bigger than many countries in the world. So it's high time that to overcome all kinds of diversity, all kinds of distributed mechanism of justice, this can be made into a uniform mechanism of justice by treating all the women as the same, all the women victims as the same, and terming it as a violation of human rights. So mechanisms are not difficult to build. The state just has to put some guidelines, or Supreme Court, like in terms of Domestic Violence Act, has given, for the first time, Act is carrying a deadline. It says within 60 days it has to be over. So no other maintenance law mentions the number of days. The temporal limit is not provided, which is actually, I feel, that has been incorporated from section 173 of CRPC, where an investigation has to be completed within 60 days and 90 days. So maybe it is incorporated from there that the Domestic Violence Act cases in the matters of trial should also be over within 60 days. But there is another judgment of Karnataka High Court only delivered by Justice Naga Prasanna, where though in one judgment he says that 60 days is sacrosanct, but at the same time in a Hindu Marriage Act case, he gives a timeline which goes beyond 180 days, as you say. So if we go on, there is a need to be for judiciary to take upon itself the strict mandate of the Act of 60 days, and drawing from the 60 Days Act, because in the Marriage Act is 1955, some other acts are even much earlier and early time, whereas Domestic Violence Act is 2005, so they had the sense of fixing a timeline, but as a practice, and laws can be, the judicial pronouncement can always supplement, which is missing in the Act, by giving a guideline of the deadlines for even for Hindu Marriage Act or Indian Divorce Act or Muslim Women Divorce Act and things like that. So this can be temporal timelines can be provided, procedural guidelines can be provided for expeditious delivery of justice. So this is all from my side, especially for keeping it within state responsibility. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir. Because why we kept the question is, when I visited a police station about 5-6 years ago, I asked them, are there any warrants which has to be served in relation to the maintenance? Then the police officer took from his drawers, table drawers, and showed me 2 bunches that has to. Then I asked that, why did you serve? No, we are very busy and we don't have the manpower. Then it made me to think that when the court gives the orders, if a common man or an officer, if they don't oblige it and if they don't go ahead, then there's a lot of punishment and different technical terminology they are using it. But when an officer, like as a state, when they are not delivering their duty which is mandatory in the law, then what to do? That made us to do this research and combined with the agonies of the woman which we have seen it. Even a woman who is in early 20s, got married, having 3 girl children, 4 abortions, total 7 pregnancies, and the husband is an army officer. Still she is fighting in the law for maintenance. So all these cases have made us to fight for these things and to bring a change, and really I am very thankful that you have given how the state can be responsible and what kind of initiatives women can start dialogue for triggering a change to bring the state responsibility in the domestic laws. And we are also thinking that the divorce, maintenance and child guardianship, restoration of conjugal rights, different courts the women are going. They are foregoing their livelihoods. Every time they have to appear for one court or the other. So under one umbrella also, how do we bring it? This is another thing which we are also taking ahead with it, and we certainly approach you and we request you to guide us how to take further and to put for different government functionaries and judicial level at the Supreme Court how we can bring the state responsibility in the domestic laws. Thank you so much. I request Ms. Ashwini to take ahead with regard to the legal aspect, because she is having a lot of expertise with regard to Dhwani legal aid, and she can tell about, although there are timelines are there in the judiciary to take it ahead, but is it ignored or with an excuse of not having the missionary or fast track courts, blah blah blah. So I want to hear more from you that how the judiciary and the legal system and also the legal services authorities, which is already kept an LSR, and how is it working and how it is not working, whether people are aware of it, are using it. So try to flow your impressions and responses on those things. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, ma'am. It's an absolute pleasure to be in RV University today. So firstly, thank you for the invite. And secondly, it's an absolute pleasure to be on this panel with Dr. Amar Pandey, who seems to be quite an expert. Like his notion that state responsibility must be extended to also maintenance cases was something I don't think anyone's thought of those lines. That's a very new perspective. So thank you for that macro level perspective on how state must take responsibility for its women, who form 50% of its population. Where I will come in from is a complete contrast from where Dr. Pandey came in. I'll go into the micro level aspects of the problems that women are facing with a very, very strong appreciation to the macro level input that Sir gave. Like, that was mind-blowing. I absolutely loved that perspective. In terms of the micro level aspects, with personal experience where I face problems as an advocate working for women on these laws, is we have women walking into my office every day saying, my husband beat me up, he's thrown me out of the house, please help me. So this is my everyday routine. And I mean, if the state had functioned to its best capacity, or rather even to its mediocre capacity, such situations would never have happened. The women would have not come to me as an NGO or a women's rights advocate. They would perhaps go into a police station very fearlessly and say, this is my case, please register an FIR. Now, why this is failing and why women are unable to express their, enforce their rights very effectively is because of several factors which I have noted down based on my experience, limited experience I will say. Now, firstly, there are a multiplicity of laws relating to maintenance. Now, this can be a good thing and a bad thing. Now, why is it a good thing? Because there are several laws. Like Sir said, you can go under the Domestic Violence Act, you can go under the Hindu Marriage Act, you can go under the Section 125 of CRPC, criminal laws. Now, this is great for women because they're not restricted to only one kind of remedy, but they can use several laws to enforce their rights across. So that is a good part of it. Now, the bad part of it is they do not know which law to use when. Right? Which forum to use, because to file a Section 125 application, you have to go to the Magistrates Court. To file a family court, to file an application under family law, you have to go to the family court. Okay? And if nothing works out, suppose you filed a case against your husband and it's not going anywhere, you will have to go to the High Court under Section 482 to mandate the authorities to do their job. So, I as a lawyer sometimes grapple with the amount of forums I have to approach to help people enforce their rights. So I'm not infantilizing a client, but then imagine the plight of a woman, especially a woman from a non-urban background, non-English speaking, lower caste, quote unquote, non-upper class background. Imagine the trauma she is going through to approach all these forums to enforce their rights. In addition to the trauma of domestic violence, of sexual harassment, of sexual assault by her own husband, and marital rape is not rape in India. So imagine the universe of trauma that a woman is going through. So this is the micro level approach that we take. Like, I do not claim tomorrow, I do not even want to claim as an organization, I have helped thousands of women. But I will claim I have helped 2 women secure justice. So that's the amount of micro level that we go into. I understand it's a very, very impractical way of approaching it, considering the amount of problems out there. But the first problem I have noticed that women grapple with is the multiplicity of laws that they have to understand to enforce their rights, number one. Number two, the multiplicity of the forums that they have to approach for various under various laws to approach to enforce their rights. Now, thirdly, assume they have access to these forums, assume they know these forums, they approach a lawyer. I do not know of any organization that claims to provide legal aid for women specifically on such issues. So imagine they go to a lawyer will say, pay me 50,000, I will fight your case. Right? And that's a very low bar. Like, I don't charge 50,000, but that's a very low bar for a lawyer, especially practicing in high courts, etc. They will charge in lakhs. So imagine the plight of a woman now in all that traumatic universe that she's in, to again cough up 50,000 from somewhere. And this is when she has no financial independence, right? She's not allowed to work after marriage. In my opinion, that's the biggest problem that women must be addressing at their personal level before they approach anything. Because if you do not have your own job, then things are worse for you. Right?
How will she address it?
Yeah, I mean that's I have no answers. Really sorry to say. But that's the biggest problem. So thirdly, legal aid solutions are very minimal. And yes. Madam was asking me about legal aid, the state legal aid authorities. Now they have a panel of 100 lawyers who are paid a pittance per case. Okay, they are paid like 5,000 per case. And imagine this requires running around to a multiplicity of forums. So why would I, unless I'm personally motivated as a lawyer and I really believe in women's rights, why will I go fight a case for 5,000 rupees that the state is throwing at my face? So these are also... Sorry, I will change my language. Respectfully offering to me as an advocate. So, so
these are practical issues.
These are practical problems at the very, very micro level which I see on a daily basis. Now, more importantly, okay, assume they have access to a very good lawyer, they approach the court, they file their petition for divorce in the family court. Now, firstly, they will claim my husband has a salary of 50,000, so he has to give me 30,000. Okay, husband comes and says, I have no job. How will I pay her? That is a very, very general, a very common answer. Now, court will believe him and he will say, look at my account statement of my bank account. He will have 3 bank accounts, but he will show only 1 bank account statement and say, I have no salary. Okay. So how on earth is this woman going to prove that he actually has, lakhs in his account and I can enforce them? So, even assuming she approaches the court, verification of these factual aspects becomes a huge problem even for the judge at that level. So, and imagine because of thousands of such cases before a judge cannot take personal interest and try to ascertain really is his salary that much. I'm not, again, this is not a blame on the judge itself, but they have their own constraints, they have their own limitations when it comes to addressing such issues. Now, thirdly, in terms of whether a lump sum must be issued to the woman or monthly maintenance must be issued. I as a lawyer have always advised women, take a lump sum, do not see his face ever again. Right? However, there are systemic challenges, like every month there is a school fee to be paid. Okay? Even if she takes a lump sum, she may not have the means to invest it in a wise way in order to ensure that she and her children have a great living or livelihood. So that would force her to ensure monthly sums also are being paid. Now that's a problem. She has to run back to the husband to enforce his payment every month.
It stops after the 3rd month.
It stops after the very first month. And imagine he's caused you immense trauma, immense hardship, and you go see his face and plead him every month to give you this amount of money. So it is a very different level of pain that a victim of domestic violence, harassment goes through every month to ensure basic maintenance. Now if you ask me what does maintenance mean, now this is defined under the Hindu Adoptions and Maintenance Act, and it has a very, very simple definition. Maintenance includes provision for food, clothing, residence, education, medical attendance, treatment, and in case of an unmarried daughter, reasonable expenses incident to her marriage. Okay. But where is the maintenance law covering the dignity of the woman that has been completely stripped off? Where is it addressing the need for her livelihood that goes beyond mere living on these costs, right? Now, where is the state accounting for that? Which is when Dr. Pandey's point about state assuming responsibility, state taking up this ownership of such cases and saying, I will fight on behalf of these women, becomes extremely crucial, especially in this point of view. Now, okay, I will go to the next step. Fine, she's secured maintenance also. Now the judge, how much maintenance must be paid, there's no rule anywhere. There is no law that says this is the amount of maintenance. I think your report also says that in several places. And which means it's completely left to the discretion of the judge as to how much maintenance one woman can get. Now the fact that there is no rule on how much maintenance is great, because you can never tailor-make a law and say all women will be covered in these scenarios, and hence we have a law for her. So not having a law, not having a rule may be good in that sense that there is some discretion on the part of the judge, which he will use very positively, we hope, to help the situation of a woman. However, the lack of accountability on the part of the husband, the lack of accountability on the part of the judge itself sometimes, because the gender lens is missing in all these processes. Starting from the very first FIR that needs to be registered, the police do not have a gender lens. Next, you go to a lawyer, lawyers do not see it with a gender lens. And I'm saying gender lens in a very positive way. I don't mean bias. I mean a very good kind of bias towards a victim of domestic violence, okay, and that's completely absent. And I will also go to the extent of saying there are some brilliant judges, one mentioned by Sir, who is Justice Naga Prasanna. Right? He has a gender lens, I would say. In several cases, he's given very, very good decisions, but that is a rarity. Right? At the cost of contempt of court, I will say that gender lens is completely absent in the bar, in the judiciary, in the police, everywhere. Right? So, and I will go on. I think I'm ranting right now. So I'll go on to the next. I can rant. Okay. I can go to the next problem. Now the role of the lawyers itself. Now I see that I cannot comment on other bars, but the Karnataka bar has a set of lawyers who do only family cases. And what do they mean by saying I will do only family cases? They mean I will do settlement for you, which means I will take a cut from you in whatever settlement you obtain. Now that is a huge breach of legal ethics, professional ethics for lawyers. Right? However, it is a system that is happening. I won't say all lawyers are like that, of course not. There are bad apples everywhere. I am commenting on the bad apples. Right? So there are lawyers who are supposed to act as officers of the court. Right? They're supposed to ensure justice is met. However, they act as agents of their client, whichever side their client is on, and that completely violates the justice.
And they get bought by the client.
Yeah, that's the other thing I wanted to say. There is always this situation of collusion between the lawyers and the other side, right? However much I as a lawyer have tried to not interact with the opposite client to the best of my abilities, it cannot happen. I have to interact with the other side for whatever procedural reasons, mediation needs to be fixed, whatever. But then there's always this possibility of collusion which totally defeats the whole trust that the woman has in the system itself. There's already a trust deficit. Now that also is completely ruined by this possibility of collusion. Alright. So these are set. I mean, I have many more, but I will stop my rant here. But I will end by saying that what I also see a lack in is the intersectionality of the cases itself. Now we have to see very, very carefully the positionality of a woman who comes to us to seek justice. Is she upper class, lower caste, dominant caste, rural, urban, English speaking, etc. The legal system definitely doesn't take into account these things because it's going to go on the law. It will apply section 125 or it will apply section 13(1) of the Hindu Marriage Act and issue divorce. But the positionality of the woman is crucial to the system. And there are lots of caste angles, lots of class angles, which the law and the legal system, in fact the justice system, ignores willfully in the pursuit of justice. So I will end with saying that, these are some of the problems systemically that I have observed in my limited experience as an advocate fighting for women's rights. I definitely see hope. Like if you ask me what makes you wake up and fight after you've listed out all these 100 headaches, I will definitely fight because there's a lot of hope I see in the system. And there are several who I know are personally fighting for women's rights and very, very passionately so. Right? So in that sense, I am not at all, disillusioned or, going with a lot of negative attitude. We will definitely continue to fight. But there are definitely these problems which we should never ignore for the purpose of our study. So thank you very much. Rant over.
For putting forth some of the ground level issues which we are seeing it. And when we are doing this research also, we did involve the Symbiosis Law University and also did a study on the different laws available in the other countries also. So we have also, when we did the interviews with the US based people like that, they have also told that pro bono system of the lawyers is there. If that can be introduced in India, how can it be also, they told. And also, with regard to the current maintenance laws, we are not looking at the standard of living of the woman when we are basing the maintenance amount when we are doing it. So how do you see these two things to come up into the reformation and the maintenance laws?
I'm sorry, what's the second thing? I got the first thing, pro bono.
Pro bono, standard of living of the woman prior to this divorce or the how much she is maintaining and like that. And like that, how do we apply it in the maintenance laws?
Okay, so the first point, Mama, the pro bono lawyers. I know of some organizations who are doing pro bono lawyering. So I'm sure every time I meet a woman who's in distress, I say, come, I'll help you. Or if I can't help you, come, I'll connect you to someone. So I think there's already a system, and currently I saw, in fact yesterday I saw on social media somebody who's creating an Excel sheet with all organizations fighting pro bono for women. So there are these social justice initiatives on the part of lawyers and NGOs, definitely. Secondly, in terms of the state responsibility when it comes to pro bono lawyering, the state pro bono lawyering systems exist. There is the KSLSA, which is the Karnataka State Legal Services Authority. There's also the DLSA, which is the District Legal Services Authority, and Taluk level authorities. Now, each of these authorities have lawyers as panel advocates. However, I don't know if the system is working very well. I will not make a claim and say it's not working. I don't think it is working extremely well, because if it was, then the women, right now women don't even know that we can approach these authorities.
Yes.
So if these authorities are working and they're advertising themselves in a good way, so as to reach the women, the last woman I am talking about, then maybe there could be something done. Now I think that where we can solve that problem is, I have thought about putting up a system in place, very ambitious, but I'm thinking about putting up a system in place which is a web, which has lawyers, NGOs, legal aid authorities, police, retired judges, who can form a system, connect us to their own communities of lawyers, judges, NGOs, etc. And we can form some sort of a web wherein any woman who enters it can hope for justice in the future. So I think setting up that system at a very, very micro level and at many places would be, I think, a practical solution to this. Again, very ambitious, but I think it can happen if we try. That's one thing. On the maintenance of the livelihood itself, that's a very, very tough question. I have no answer to it, because women like who come to me, they are people who are domestic workers. They go to houses to sweep and mop. So what level of livelihood am I supposed to promise to them if they win this case? So I don't know how we can address it. I think the way to address it would be to see maintenance beyond this definition under law as being a livelihood wage, right? Not just a minimum wage, but a wage for livelihood. And this livelihood wage is protected under the Constitution in the Directive Principles, right? So I would say, rather than just giving them medicine cost, sari cost, whatever, clothes, etc., it should be for their livelihood, to ensure that they live a dignified life, not just, breathe and survive in this world. So I don't have an answer, but I think that's the direction I would see it in.
See, there are Supreme Court judgments also where maintenance has been said by Supreme Court that it should be according to the status she was living in. But I have yet to find any judgment which is in totality given a woman her due. There are no judgments. Women are still fighting, or they may be in between.
Thank you so much, Ashwini. And yeah.
So basically, maintenance is to retain the status what it was when they were together.
Yes.
So it's a simple, basic thing. Now we have examples of courts considering it and then trying to, in their own best judgment, depending upon the facts available with them. For Muslim women, if I'm not wrong, it's something like 25% of whatever income has been assessed with the husband. So 25% of that has been considered to be good enough to maintain the previous status. In some cases, it is even 20%, 1/5 of the income. I was just checking these Nordic countries, because Nordic countries are supposed to be those places where women have a reasonably good status and standard of living. In fact, I was surprised that Nordic countries, this maintenance is not really an issue there, because most of the women are working, they're independent livelihood and all that, so it's not even such a major issue, but only in certain special circumstances, health conditions and other things, and special situations, this is entertained in some cases. In USA, they have devised a formula by which up to 40 to 50% is being considered income. And in some countries, all the assets are put together and it's equally divided, including immobile property also. Whatever proceeds are going to come, so we have to see all this, and as you mentioned, so many, the spectrum is so wide from here to here. So something needs to be some formula. Professor Murthy is from statistics background, so you can devise some method and formula and make it somewhere reasonable. Well, it needs to be done because we are still it's at the discretion of the judge and appreciation of the facts.
Currently, it is very meager, or some cases people claim it is disproportionate, and so there are either extremes, and mostly on the meager side. And
It's not even minimum wage act.
The two are not connected.
They're not connected, but some have some.
But himself is not getting minimum wage food.
Thank you so much for all your inputs. Now I request Pritam Ghosh, from an academic angle, how we can work together to build a more robust laws after centuries. We are going through with the Reformation. So how do we build it? And what observations you have seen in the current, how we can improve it, make it a robust one?
Thank you, ma'am. Good afternoon, everyone. First of all, I would like to thank our Honorable Vice-Chancellor, Dr. Murthy, for choosing me to be a part of the panel. Thank you so much, sir. And I'm extremely privileged to be in the midst of elite company. I do echo all the views of my earlier panelists. I do feel the same way that drastic changes are necessary in the current legal framework. And additionally, I would also like to put forward my views about my own exposure and experiences to the personal laws in India, including the laws relating to maintenance. My exposure to the personal laws as well as the laws relating to maintenance has come at two different stages of my career. The first stage was when, as a part of the Legal Aid and Literacy Cell at Symbiosis Law School, Pune, we had an opportunity to work on the Maharashtra chapter of the UNDP Access to Justice project. As a part of the project, the main responsibility that we took up was we were supposed to go to the different courts in the state of Maharashtra and find out at what stages and because of what reasons various civil and criminal trials are getting delayed. And we came across some absolutely shocking revelations. I would like to bring up one of the examples that we came across. So there was this woman who was separated from her husband because she became a victim of domestic violence. She decided to leave the matrimonial home and go and stay with her parents. She had a child also. So she approached a family court lawyer and the necessary procedures were undertaken. And just 1 week before the date of the first hearing, the lawyer had 2 cell phones, he had an email ID, and just 1 week before the date of the first hearing, he was absolutely not reachable. And that period of not being reachable, unfortunately, went up to 2 years.
Yes.
So for 2 continuous years, the woman kept chasing the lawyer, emails, phone calls, no response, and then finally she landed up before the court herself, because in India, our laws allow the parties to appear in person also before courts. So she, one fine day, decides to take help of another friend who was not practicing in Maharashtra, was practicing elsewhere, and decides to land up before the family court judge and ask for a new lawyer. So then thankfully from the legal aid committee of that particular court, a lawyer was assigned to her, and then her matter was taken forward, and finally at the end of around 8 months, she was given a lump sum of around 5 lakhs and the husband had to pay it up. So this is the fate that most of the litigation in our country meets. Yes, in this case, there was ultimately a good, favorable ending for the woman, but then there are many cases where there's no end to this. And as somebody from the legal fraternity and from the legal academia, it's extremely unfortunate for me to see such kind of an instance, that a lawyer who is supposed to represent the client in the court himself is not reachable for 2 years and remains not reachable. The more recent exposure to laws relating to maintenance came when I was doing my PhD research. My PhD research is on reformation of the custody laws in India. And we know that custody and maintenance in the personal laws walk hand in hand together. The specific perspective that I took up for my PhD research was with regards to NRI women, because the problem of being abandoned on foreign territory and having to fight for child custody and maintenance has been there for years together now, over 5 decades, and we still have not found any solution to that. And the other shocking fact that I came across was, during my PhD research, was that in more than 80% of cases, the foreign court awarded custody to the mother, and had also awarded either a lump sum maintenance amount so that she could take care of herself and her child, or an interim maintenance. And the father decided to violate that foreign court order, come to India, get a custody order in his favor from an Indian court, and then he was not ready to go back to the foreign territory and report to the foreign court and pay up the maintenance, or if the custody was given to the mother, hand over the custody of the child to the mother. This, at the international level as well as at the domestic level, has given rise to an issue called inter-country parental child removal. This is the term that we generally use, where custody and maybe, let's say, a maintenance amount, etc., was already awarded by a foreign court to the mother, and in violation of that, the other spouse, who invariably in most cases has been the father, decided to take away the child, come to his own country of nationality, and also denied to hand over the custody, denied to pay maintenance, in fact got orders in his favor done from an Indian court. So invariably there was a conflict of decisions between a foreign court and an Indian court. Whose decision do we follow when this kind of a situation arises? That's the biggest question that arises in this situation. And we have not found an answer. Indian courts, what they have done is, they have used the Indian custody laws like Hindu Adoptions and Maintenance Act, Hindu Minority and Guardianship Act. There is another British era law called Guardians and Wards Act, which is almost outdated and obsolete and not being used right now in most cases. But then there is no separate law, and I'm happy that VMM has in its research report also brought this point up, that there is no separate law to deal with this kind of a situation where, let's say, the woman has nothing with her. She doesn't have the custody of the child, she doesn't have a maintenance amount also with her. So what do we do? So my personal view, which has also come up as a suggestion, as a finding, as a part of my PhD research, is that it is high time that we need a separate law on this. 2016 to 18, lot of attempts were made to bring up a law like this which would address these issues. The Ministry of Women and Child Development brought out a draft bill. The National Commission for Women held a consultation session on this. The Law Commission of India also brought out a bill on this, but then ultimately, end of the day, all those things have been shelved. And on top of that, India is not a party to some of the international conventions also, which we should have been. For example, if I may use one of the conventions which would be relevant here to mention, that is the Hague Convention on Civil Aspects of International Child Abduction. This was a convention that came in 1980, which addresses the issue of parents taking away their children to a foreign territory and trying to obtain the custody of the child unlawfully in spite of foreign court orders being there. That particular convention itself does not have the angle of domestic violence in it. It just simply says that if a parent has taken away the child, he or she should immediately return the child to the place of its habitual residence, as in the place where the child was ordinarily resident. But the problem is, in cases of domestic violence, the place of ordinary residence is the place where the child has become a victim of violence. So if you are asking the mother to hand over the custody of the child to the father, who is on a foreign territory and has subjected both the mother as well as the child to domestic violence, where does she go and where does the child go? So that is something that is completely unaddressed in the convention, and invariably therefore around the world, even though close to around 110 countries have adopted this convention, there is this loophole in every country's law where the domestic violence angle is not being taken into consideration at all when it comes to handing over of child custody and awarding of maintenance, etc. So these are some of the things that I had in mind, and the final suggestion that I had in mind was with regards to the judges. I think Advocate Ashwini also mentioned about the judicial officers themselves not being well versed or sensitive about this. I think the first group of people who need to be trained about the importance of the maintenance laws, custody laws, etc. And anything related to the personal laws are the judges themselves. Because invariably there is a reluctance to get into anything which is related to personal laws because it has a religion base attached to it. So judges are a very reluctant lot to get into those cases in the first place. And the other thing also is that judges themselves, I have come across many judgments in the last around 2 decades where I found that even the Supreme Court is mentioning that domestic violence is not an offense in itself. Only if somebody violates an order under the Domestic Violence Act, then we treat it as an offense. I found it very surprising that in that case, you are making the Domestic Violence Act 2005 a penal law with a civil remedy, which is completely self-contradictory. So I think this is the other aspect which needs to be reformed, and the judges somehow have to be trained and sensitized that Domestic Violence Act is not an act which is a penal act with a civil remedy. It's a penal act with a penal objective and a penal remedy also. The other impression, I was talking to one of my friends who practices family law at in West Bengal, in the family court and the high court over there. So he was saying that lawyers and judges also have this impression that amongst all the other important matters, anything related to personal laws can take a backseat. When it comes to maintenance, child custody, okay, it can be decided tomorrow. I mean, something which relates to the government, something where the state or the central government is involved is much more important for us. Yeah, that's definitely not the case with everyone, but there's a general impression like that. So somewhere I think the judges have to be sensitized and told that when there's, let's say, a woman's maintenance or the issue of her getting her child's custody in question involved, you have to prioritize it and treat it as a first priority and deal with it as early as possible instead of going on adjourning those cases and going on postponing the final verdict. So these are some of the very humble suggestions that I wanted. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I just want to know, because we are all in the age of technology, do you think that many women are losing their livelihoods when they are coming to the different courts and attending for these things? Then the video conferencing can be introduced, because the COVID is one of the things which gives a momentum to use the technology and online mechanisms. Do you think that the video conferencing can be introduced in these maintenance and domestic violence cases?
Absolutely. In fact, if we look at the trend around the world, online dispute resolution is something which is already in vogue. Many countries are using, in fact, the family courts across countries around the world are using this as a practice to settle all matters relating to personal laws, including maintenance, custody, everything. But in India, it's still an alien concept because training the judges about technology itself becomes a very tedious task, but then definitely there is a case for online dispute resolution to be implemented in India as well.
Coming to this online thing, COVID has really taken us ahead almost by 50 years. What we would have in terms of technology, we would have perhaps been resistant all along. But this, and the judiciary took the initiative. Because not just dispute resolution, but production of in-custody criminals, accused persons, everything was done through online, and so thanks to COVID, our judiciary is very tech-savvy now, and it's no more an issue. And in fact, Justice R. Prisonner's one judgment in a case, he has accepted, not only accepted, he is the one who issued the guideline. The notices can be sent even on WhatsApp and mail, email. So this is nothing but kind of advancement taking place in terms of converting the judicial processes online, which is a very, very and one thing Professor goes. See, what happens that any enactment has to face umpteen number of structural challenges. So, when we are not a part of government, then we see it in a different space, and we really end up painting the whole thing with the same brush. It's not so. There's tremendous efforts are being made to make the judiciary aware, police officers aware, special workshops, classes, the experts are being called, interactions happen. So these initiatives are there. It's just that the volume is so big. Volume is so big that sometimes we get an impression that it's not happening. But having been in the government for a very long time and also been a part of a training academy where I was training myself, I was training also as the director of the academy. We have had many workshops in collaboration with Women and Child Ministry and agencies. So we should, in academics, when I was a student, I found that our own professors also have this knack of painting government in a very expert's light. So now, having been on both sides, I think we need to side time as experts, as persons of responsibility. We must have discussion by giving opinion about whatever issues are there. Thanks.
Talking about technology, it can be used for a better case management system. In fact, you can track cases, and the cases which are pending for more than the stipulated time, one there was mention of 60 days, 180 days, etc. The alarm bell should go, ring. There is a case of a woman in distress, so there should be, tech should be used to analyze the pending cases, pending for how long, 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, and then if it is more than a particular year, the accountability should kick in. And
that's what we have to see, that the accountability of the different stakeholders is very important. That's what missing in the chain, because although we have time-bound nature in some of the laws, but it is only on paper, not much in the execution. So these things when we are going, thank you so much for all the panelists for giving their opinions. Now the floor is open for questions for about 15 minutes. Those who want to ask the questions, let's go ahead. Just a minute.
there's one here, there's one there.
Yeah, one there also.
Okay. You think
While addressing this problem, maintenance law, domestic violence,
You introduce yourself.
I am Kala Devaraj, a retired banker, and I am associated with Keerthi in some social activities. So we are addressing Dr. Amar Pandey. He told the state is the responsible for all this. That is the macro of this one. And mostly we are attending micro level cases of urban and cities. And the state responsibility should be, they should have a mechanism to reach the rural places. They don't have any approach, they don't know how to fight that one. And our country is such a big, this one, so much 140 crore people. How do we have to devise a mechanism to each and every place, not only urban and city. And they don't know anything, rural people, whether we can fight. There are more domestic violences, and those women were not treated as human beings. Even they are so much this one inhuman harassment, what they are facing, it is not this one. So SARS, Dr. Amar Pandey's suggestion of the session is that they have to implement that state responsibility should come into practical this one, and it should reach to all the places, not only urban and city. Now we are able to reach, suppose one point I am telling. Our Dr. Keerthi is somebody in Vijayawada. She went to police station and he could give a respectable answer. We are having so many cases. Suppose an ordinary woman goes to the police station, can't you adjust with your husband? Why you have come brought to this situation? He will insult. Police person will insult her and send her. This is the practical things what is happening. And another thing is, the state mechanism should give some some responsibility to panchayat level also. Panchayat level. And this 140 crore people simply, this theories will not help. This practical NGOs, how much we can do? And some good intention people, lawyers like you, they are, how many? It is not possible, and you only told and that law of fraternity, what is happening. So this we have to start some pressure groups all over the country. All over the country, especially in the north villages and all, so many atrocities are happening. It is not coming to light. This state, under state responsibility, they have to devise a very, very serious mechanism to reach people.
Can I just add a linked question?
Yeah. You can use.
In your experience in the NGO in the field, have you found that ASHA workers become sort of quasi-legal entities?
Yes.
Do they participate? Because they're already doing a lot of work. Because when I went and worked with ASHA workers in Rajasthan, they were the one-point government for all the women, including, because sexual harassment they are working quite a bit, and so they are loaded with nutrition and child. We are doing very well in reaching rural area and nutrition and child. If that kind of another type of an ASHA worker is there, I mean, or they're given more resources, they become the one point. So in your experience, does that work? Or do the ASHA workers have a legal position to go to the police on behalf of, for example, for maintenance? For sexual harassment, yes, but for maintenance and things like that, have you found in your experience it works? Does the system work? Or is it again going to go into overburdening of the ASHA?
Police is getting mentioned immediately, so I must defend. Yeah. So, see, I'll keep it separate. First, as the police experience part, I'll say. It's an individual issue where some police officers have neglected, but a vast majority of police officers at the police station level, they're equally sensitive, and they take the case as it comes. And this is, as a part of the state responsibility, we see that the state has already taken responsibility to a certain extent where, domestic violence act cases, not the 125 CR cases, which goes to the magistrate. The domestic violence act case is attached the highest priority. The DBA cases, it is immediately taken. And no doubt that police officers, being part of the society, do come across cases where they feel like expressing their views and advice, telling that family issue, whatever they mention, they do try to first bring them to a level where they can come together and understand each other better and not to fight. In this regard, within the police stations, women staff have been allotted. And when a lady comes in, then a women staff talks. Because it is perceptually it is felt that a woman would understand better and they can talk freely and they can express. Under part of Nirbhaya scheme, it's a Ministry of Home Affairs Nirbhaya scheme, 200 police stations where on kind of analysis it has been found that the frequency of cases under DB Act and women related cases are more. In those police stations, home guards have, members of civil defense have been appointed. Because why I am saying so, because I was heading I was a Director General of Civil Defence Home Guards also. So the 3 batches I have trained, and they have been allotted to police station, where as a part of civilian, they receive the complainant, women complainant and child, and first they talk. They've been allotted a room to speak. Once they have spoken, then they connect with the station house officer and convey their problems and all that. And if it is not responded, then they are supposed to escalate the matter to the higher level. So police officers' discretion of neglecting complaints from women and children has been almost drastically reduced. So they are being responded to. This is one major part. So that classical thinking that what they show in movies and all that has changed very substantially. So movie, they do it for their own creative ideas, they implement there to highlight some situations and all that. So this is as far as the police response is concerned. Coming to the state responsibility in such matters, like Madam, you mentioned about 200 warrants lying in the drawer. So this is a situation where if it is returned unserved, if warrant is not served on the person against whom the warrant is issued, then there is a limit that 1 time, 2 times, the court has to give reasonable opportunity for person to appear. So first it is summon, and then bailable warrant, then non-bailable warrant, and then arrest warrant. So it's the coercion by the court is gradual. That's one part. So if the state takes over the responsibility and then keeping these many warrants in the drawer, repeatedly not executing, then the officer has to be accountable. Okay, someone has to make him accountable. A superior has to make him accountable, because police officers, anybody and everybody can't make him accountable. Only his own superior, who can exercise power and authority under Section 36 of CRPC, can make him accountable. In another case, I came across where a trial has been delayed by some 9 years or 13 years or something. In that case, the High Court has just issued a kind of a normative instruction to the trial judge to be sensitive to such cases. If it's a 13-year delay, the High Court should have taken it up differently and set an example that no more delays are tolerated. 13 years is a very, very long time. So wherever opportunity comes, if state responsibility comes into the play, I am thinking of a hypothetical situation as I have only proposed it. So if state responsibility is existing, then the person who's delayed, justice is delayed, has to be compensated by way of some monetary compensation or whatever compensation for the delay, and it has to be recovered from the person who is found to be responsible for the delay. So this kind of new accountability will come into the picture once we have state responsibility. I hope, Madam, your complaint against police has come to
Sorry, I just add a few points to both Madam's questions. So one about ASHA workers. I have been a part of several initiatives where we go train ASHA workers on the legal aspects related to women so that we can equip them. But just like you mentioned, they're extremely busy with all the responsibilities already overburdened. Like they don't have the time to be these quasi-judicial bodies. So it's important, like you said, to create more kinds of ASHA workers, like call them whatever, but make more actors available at the local level, especially at the rural level. Because just 2 days ago, I received a call. So I went on Doordarshan to explain about women's rights. And Doordarshan Kannada goes across, like it's not only Bangalore based, so it goes to all villages. So I've been getting like 50, 100 calls. They displayed my number, unfortunately, on TV. So yes, I've been continuously getting calls, and especially by women from rural backgrounds who are telling me I'm locked up in my house, ma'am, what should I do? And I have no answer. Like, how can I go and help a woman, say, in some Jamkandi in Bagalkot?
Yes.
Right? So I completely take your point.
112.
So the thing is,
No, I know, it's
Yeah.
difficult for you to make so many calls, but like,
Yes.
yeah, 112 is very effective.
no, definitely. I'm sure she has some resources where she calls. So she was calling me also secretly, like away from her husband. So even telling her, okay, go to the police station, she's like, I'm locked up. I say, okay, call someone in the local NGO. I connected her to a local NGO. I said, call them. And in fact, I called her to ask what happened about your case, ma'am. And she said, wrong number, ma'am, because she was with her husband.
Yes.
So, like, these are the situations we're dealing with. So I completely take your point. The rural belt, especially, and I'm not saying rural women are more, vulnerable or anything, but they're definitely vulnerable, and we have very few systems catering to rural needs, and it becomes very difficult. Like Sir said, these numbers are there. First of all, they don't even know these numbers exist. So definitely we should tell them, number one, these are the numbers. But even reaching out that physical access at a rural level is like absent in so many cases. So I completely take your point. It's a very valid point. And there are systems which are non-existent there. Yeah.
I'll just add on one point to about the rural-urban gap. Can we think of as a suggestion designating at the district level one code as a maintenance code for fast tracking? Because right now there is no special mechanism for handling these cases, and that's why there are delays, etc. We can think of having one code as a maintenance code at the district level.
Yes, I would like to add what you're saying is, how do women approach the authorities? So, on my own, I have been visiting courts and seen, talking to women, and in fact, Dr. Keerthi knows about it, as to get the insights, what can be improved as a system. So, if you see, all these beauty parlors, even hospitals, they get these cases. During COVID times, I am an integrated counselor. Daily I was getting at least 10 calls where women were cooped up, their phones were thrown away, they had no support system and they didn't know where to go actually. Because first phase was very horrible, no connection whatsoever. So in fact I keep writing letters to authority as to what can be the general system where women can come and complain. Maybe we can display a sticker with all the numbers. Milk distribution system like in Delhi, the mother dairies there, they have these things. Maybe beauty parlors, maybe kirana shops where guidelines from WCD can come. Then you display just a sticker with the numbers, health numbers. Temples, if you go there, most of the women you will see sometimes they are crying there because their families allow them to come to temples, but they are not allowed to go to their parents. Maybe we can take them into account, but I don't know how will it happen, whether these people will allow. Churches, similarly, all religious places, but they are so cooped up and they are so silenced, they don't even utter they are undergoing to. Women in our country are most unsafe in their own homes than on streets. Especially you talk about rural, we talk about Anganwadis, even middle class women where there is a shame of talking about their husband's beaten.
That is very bad. Yes. Can we take the question from her? Yeah. You introduce yourself. You want to ask?
ಓಕೆ ಅಶ್ವಿನಿ ಮೇಡಮ್ ಕನ್ನಡ ಮಾತಾಡಿದ್ರೆ ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಟ್ರಾನ್ಸ್ಲೇಟ್ ಮಾಡಲಿಕ್ಕಾಗುತ್ತೆ ಅಂತ. ಓಕೆ, ನನ್ನ ಹೆಸರು ಯಶೋಧ ಅಂತ. ಮುನ್ನಡೆ ಸೋಷಿಯಲ್ ಆರ್ಗನೈಸೇಷನ್ ಅಂತ ಬೆಂಗಳೂರಲ್ಲಿದೆ. ನಾವು ಗಾರ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಫ್ಯಾಕ್ಟ್ರಿನಲ್ಲಿ ಕೆಲಸ ಮಾಡೋ ಹೆಣ್ಮಕ್ಳು ಮತ್ತು ಮನೆ ಕೆಲಸ ಮಾಡೋ ಅಂತ ಹೆಣ್ಮಕ್ಳೊಟ್ಟಿಗೆ ಕೆಲಸ ಮಾಡ್ತೀವಿ. ಏನು ಚರ್ಚೆ ನಡೀತಾ ಇದೆ, ಇದೇ ನಿಟ್ಟಿನಲ್ಲಿ ನಮಗೂ ಕೂಡ ಹಲವಾರು ಕೇಸ್ಗಳು ಬರುತ್ತೆ. ನಾವು ಪ್ರತಿ ಸಂಡೇ ಕೌನ್ಸಿಲಿಂಗ್ ಮತ್ತು ಲೀಗಲ್ ಅಡ್ವೈಸರ್ನ ನಾವು ಆಫೀಸಲ್ಲಿ ಬರ್ಲಿಕ್ಕೆ ಹೇಳ್ತೀವಿ, ಆ ದಿನ ಬರ್ತಾರೆ. ಮೊದಲನೇದಾಗಿ ಮೇಂಟೆನೆನ್ಸ್ ಅಂತ ನಾವು ಮಾತಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದೀವಲ್ಲ, ಮೇಂಟೆನೆನ್ಸು ಯಾವುದೋ ಒಂದು ಕಂಪ್ನಿನಲ್ಲಿ ಕೆಲಸ ಮಾಡೋ ಅಂತ ಎಂಪ್ಲಾಯಿ ಇರಬಹುದು, ಅಥವಾ ಯಾವುದೋ ಒಂದು ಗೌರ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಜಾಬಲ್ಲಿ ಬರ್ತಕ್ಕಂಥ ಎಂಪ್ಲಾಯಿ ಇರ್ಬೋದು. ಅವರಿಂದ ಮೇಂಟೆನೆನ್ಸ್ನ ನಾವು ಏನು 2 ವರ್ಷ ಆದಮೇಲೆ 5 ವರ್ಷ ಆದಮೇಲೆ ಪಡ್ಕೊಳ್ಳಿಕ್ಕಾಗುತ್ತೆ. ನಾವು ಕೆಲಸ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಅಂತ ಸೆಕ್ಟರಲ್ಲಿ ಕೆಲಸ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇರೋರೆಲ್ಲ ಅಸಂಘಟಿತ ಕಾರ್ಮಿಕರು, ಟ್ಯಾಕ್ಸಿ ಡ್ರೈವರ್ ಇರ್ಬೋದು, ಆಟೋ ಡ್ರೈವರ್ ಇರ್ಬೋದು, ವೆಜಿಟೇಬಲ್ ಮಾರ್ಕೆಟಲ್ಲಿ ಕೆಲಸ ಮಾಡ್ತಾರೆ. ಈ ರೀತಿ ಹೆಣ್ಮಕ್ಳು ಡೊಮೆಸ್ಟಿಕ್ ವೈಲೆನ್ಸ್ ಆಗಿ ಮೇಂಟೆನೆನ್ಸ್ ಅಂತ ಬಂದಾಗ ಎಷ್ಟು ಕಷ್ಟ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ. ಇದನ್ನ ಹೇಗೆ
ಕೋರ್ಟ್ ಅಲ್ಲದೆ ಹೊರಗಡೆ ಹೇಗೆ ತರ್ತೀವಿ ಅಂತ ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಯಾರಾದರೂ ಗೊತ್ತಿರೋರು ಮಾತಾಡಬೇಕಾಗತ್ತೆ. ಎರಡನೇದು ಏನಂದರೆ, ನಾನು ಒಂದು ಕೇಸನ್ನು ಫೈಲ್ ಮಾಡಿ 4 ವರ್ಷ ಆಯಿತು. ಮೊದಲನೇ ಫಸ್ಟ್ ಕೋವಿಡಲ್ಲಿ ಕೇಸ್ ಫೈಲ್ ಮಾಡಿದ್ದು. ಅವ್ನಿಗೆ ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಜಾಗ ಇತ್ತು ಬೆಂಗಳೂರಲ್ಲಿ, ಅದನ್ನು ಕೂಡ ಮಾರ್ಕೊಂಡು ಹೋಗಿ 2ನೇ ಮದುವೆ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಂಡು ಇವತ್ತು ಕೂಡ ನಮಗೆ ಆ ಮಕ್ಕಳನ್ನ ಅವ್ರಿಗೆ ಕೊಡಿಸ್ಲಿಕ್ಕಾಗಿಲ್ಲ, ಮತ್ತು ಮೇಂಟೆನೆನ್ಸ್ನ ಕೊಡಿಸ್ಲಿಕ್ಕಾಗಿಲ್ಲ. ಈ ಥರದ ಸಮಸ್ಯೆಗಳನ್ನ ಹೇಗೆ ರಿಫಾರ್ಮ್ಸ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ನಾವು ತರಲಿಕ್ಕಾಗುತ್ತೆ ಅಂತ. ಥ್ಯಾಂಕ್ ಯು.
Just to translate that for the benefit of the audience. Ma'am said she works with Mandali. It's an organization that deals with issues of government workers, and they get several cases for maintenance and on abuse on a daily basis. One of the issues she has that she wants help with from the audience here is how to mediate cases where it relates to cases of unorganized workers, married to auto drivers, taxi drivers, and you can't go and ask them for maintenance. So how do you mediate? How do you deal with those cases outside court? Is the first question ma'am asked. Secondly, there are several cases that they deal with which are bigamy, where the husband has married someone else and gone away, and there are problems with respect to custody of children. So how can we help in those cases? Just to translate that.
Can you tell her can you respond for it?
Sure. I mean, anyone else has something else, I'm happy to.
Any questions?
Yes.
Yeah.
I have. Adding to the.
Take the mic.
I think I'm audible.
Yes.
So myself, Keerthi, thank you so much for giving me this opportunity first, and I'm very much agree with the opinion of Advocate Ashwini, and I can see the loopholes that she has mentioned regarding maintenance, and I was also closely working with the District Legal Service Authority. Adding to that, and before, like as ma'am has mentioned about putting the posters, I think that will not maybe only helping the survivors, putting the posters and then making them aware about all these numbers or the telephone numbers or whatever authorities, and also someone has to look at the authorities whether they are working on an actual level or not. That is also very much important. Now coming to Dr. Ashwini, adding to the loopholes that you have already mentioned, coming to maintenance, wherein if we see the gentleman side, and whenever it comes to maintenance per se, then at that moment, on a very practical level, they always show that I don't have any property or I don't have any job to give the maintenance, if we see on a very practical level in the cases. So on that ground, first thing will be that, and then the quality of legal aid lawyers or the panel lawyers. If we see from my own experience, I have seen firstly they are not gonna listen to you. Whatever clients will be coming, they will be asking them to come some other time, or asking them to get the Xerox or that document or something else. Then on the third point, they will be, and after getting all of that, they will be asking, okay, we will be taking your cases or even fighting your cases in a more good way if that case will be coming under my own practice and not within the DLSS schemes. So that they can earn money for that matter, and wherein the whole point becomes so lame, and that doesn't make sense at all. And coming to the solutions now, so we all know what are the problems, and this I can recommend, or this I can just propose. So Dr. Ashwini, maybe from you, as you have already seen all those challenges, when we are saying the legal aid lawyers or the panel lawyers, when we are choosing these people, the committee, those are taking interviews or there is some competitive exam for that. When, personally speaking, I have seen many lawyers in the district of Sonipat specifically, and in Gurugram as well, for that matter, on the panel. They are not very much quality of lawyers, I should say that. They are not that great in drafting or not that great in arguments, and even they are not aware of many of the schemes, and asking the law students to prepare some drafts for them when we are doing some internships with them, when we are doing some fellow programs with them. So for that matter, do you think like we can recommend to the government to do something on that perspective? Second thing, maybe we are not getting good people because because the government is not providing the enough fee, as you have already mentioned. So can we propose to like high range the fee for the panel aid lawyers so that we can get a quality people, and because our future is in their hands and we really need legal aid to be a successful thing.
Thank you. Firstly, I'll try to address Madam's question. So, ma'am, one thing that I have seen works effectively in such cases is there's a center called Parihar, which is, like sir was saying, associated with the police station, but not run by the police. So it's a set of counsellors. Oh, sorry. Okay, sir is saying it was started by him. Okay, that's a great thing to start, sir. Thank you. So I personally approach Parihar centers, and they can be of some use because they have counsellors who are trained, and they're in the campuses of police stations. So there's some sort of fear that is in the parties to settle, sort of. So I think when it comes to unorganized workers, I would recommend some of them to go sit in that center, get counsel, and then maybe look up their try to solve their problem. So that's one thing I can think of. In terms of bigamy cases where the person has married someone and gone away, criminal law is the best way to pin them down. So I know the challenges are several. Firstly, you don't even know the address of that person. So what do you write in your petition? But then somehow I will use some methods extra legal to procure those addresses and try to solve those issues for the larger good, do some wrongs. But there are ways we can solve those issues. But I think criminal way is the way, because you can file a petition with the magistrate and pursue a bigamy case. So that's something I had to say. We can discuss that further if you need me to help. On the selection of panel advocates, the procedure is very simple. They apply, there's a notification that comes up on the website saying apply, and lawyers, I think with about 7 years experience can apply, if I'm not wrong. And once the lawyers apply, they are shortlisted, they are interviewed by an esteemed panel, and that's how they enter the thing. Now the thing is, I don't know, I cannot say all lawyers are bad or the quality is terrible. I will not say that. There are definitely good lawyers with good intentions who use the law, who use extra legal means to ensure justice. So now in terms of revamping that setup, I am with you when you say let's revamp it, increase the quality. And I mean, I'm definitely with you on that. So we can make recommendations, we can use the good offices of Dr. Pandey and also definitely push for those measures. Yeah, that's on the first one. And secondly, on increasing the fee. So that's how I think Ms. Kajal approached me. I was in an earlier panel with the Member Secretary of the Karnataka Legal Services Authority, and right in front of him I listed out all the problems with their authority, and he promised me that there's something happening currently, like as we speak, about increasing the fee and ensuring there's some incentive to the lawyers. So he shot down that one criticism of mine saying we are working on it, ma'am, as we speak. So I think there are some measures. Justice Veerappa, who is a Karnataka High Court judge and retiring next week or this week actually. So he is heading the Karnataka Legal Services Authority as a chairperson. So under him, I'm told that there are several initiatives being met. So I think in the coming weeks we should be able to see some changes there. Yeah.
Will be taking one last question. Yeah. Take the mic. Give the mic.
I just have one.
Introduce it.
Yeah, my name is Selma Thomas. I'm a practicing advocate here. But prior to that, I was a social worker too. So I completely understand the question that you had asked. I want to say that instead of having a parallel system, let's strengthen the existing system, because under the DV Act there is a provision for protection officer. So at a district level, you do have protection officers. What you can do is increase the number of them, and also increase some amount of awareness, because for the longest, while I was a social worker, I didn't know who was the protection officer in the district. So you're running from pillar to post, and then you invariably end up going to police. And that sometimes the situation, experience with the police can be good, and depending on whatever it is, whatever is going on. But what I feel is that there are alternate systems in place, and going to a protection officer is always very useful. There has to be some mechanism through which some more awareness can be created, and perhaps what you expected ASHA worker to do, maybe proactively a protection officer can do it, because she is someone who has got a designation under law, and she has a job to educate all the women who are coming to her with respect to whatever is there in the DV Act. And at the same time, in cities like Bangalore, most of the protection officers are anchored at the Sakhi Center. So yeah, the Nirbhaya Sakhi Center. So in Bangalore, what I understand is there are only 4 protection officers, and sadly they only work between 11 to 5. So you make any calls before 11 AM and after 5 PM, you will not get any response. And usually there is no timing for an abuse to happen, right? So and also I do understand that we need several mechanisms to enhance access to justice. So perhaps strengthening the protection officers, ensuring that they have wider reach through awareness, and at the same time giving them certain support mechanisms so that they can do their jobs more effectively, is one place we can begin.
Thank you. The last question. Yeah.
Thank you for all your points and all. I'm going to expand the scope of maintenance, the rights and maintenance for right now. And my question is two-pronged. First is understanding the maintenance rights of transgender people within the existing law structure that we have. The Trans Right Act, which is under question right now, it does not safeguard the co-parental rights of the people, and it does not even safeguard the rights of maintenance for the people, trans people, to undergo the gender surgery which is required by the law. So how can these rights be understood under the maintenance law? And secondly, the adopted families of trans people, which is a completely different social structure and social culture, which is not recognized by the legal body. And the rights of inheritance under that structure, how that can be reformed under maintenance law to safeguard those rights. It's quite complicated.
Somebody from the panel.
So, I've delved a little bit on trans rights. So, what I'd like to say is it's not very optimistic, but the law does not cover any of the question parts that you asked us. The law is, there's a vacuum in the law, I would say, when it comes to addressing trans rights in the area of family law. That is based on the assumption that they cannot have a family, they will not have a family, or I'm maybe very brutal here. But the law does not have any protection, I would say, for trans people currently. But where the hope lies in terms of, this whole concept of transformative constitutionalism that we have. I know there's a very macro level concept again. But there is hope, because in case our judges come forward and interpret the law in a certain way, definitely we can redefine what constitutes a family, who is a woman under the law to, or who is a person under the law to claim maintenance. Why I say that is, if you look at Article 14 of our Constitution, it says no person shall be discriminated on the basis of race, caste, creed, sex, place of birth, language. Now, recently in all the LGBT cases, the word no person should be discriminated based on sex. The word sex has been expanded to mean sexual orientation. And hence, the court has said you cannot be discriminated if you are a LGBT person. So, in that way, if our judges come forward and interpret in a very purposive and transformative manner positively, I think we can bring in all your concepts as well, but currently there's a clear vacuum in the law when it comes to addressing the questions that you just asked, is what I feel, it's my opinion. Yeah.
When you are thinking about reformation of maintenance laws, also look at the alternative family structures, particularly living couples, etc.
Yes.
And then what happens when there is an issue of within the living couples or living relationship?
We have proposed to Government of India when we gave it living relationships also. Because as the days are changing, in the policy how it should be given, the government asked us to include those things also. Because the current trends we have to take into consideration and we should go ahead. To sum up, first of all, let me thank all the panelists giving us a think out of box solutions and also giving us the concepts and ideas how we can go ahead, basically how we can make the robust laws and also making the state to be responsible in making the maintenance as a human rights issue. That's very, very important. And also the accountability and transparency in the system is also, we have well addressed, and reaching the last milestone with regard to legal literacy and making them to reach the services is also very essential. And as we all have discussed that, let us all come up with a policy statement where RV University can draft it and we all can take it ahead and also submit to the Ministry of Home Affairs. We can shape the person who is looking after that, a joint secretary level person is posted for it and can send it to the Secretary WCD, and we can even start a campaign with regard to the change.org petition where we want to submit all the signatures to President of India to take ahead the reformation in the maintenance laws. Thank you so much. Over to our panel.
I would now like to call Dr. Y.S.R. Murthy to facilitate our guests for the afternoon.
Thank you so much for all the panelists. Just I forgot to tell one thing as the previous experience in the police department that Amar Pandey has told. And since 2017, VMM is leading an initiative with the AP Police Mahila Mitra. It's each police we started with an initiative of 21 police units in Vijayawada Police Commissionerate area. In each police station catchment area, there are 10 to 15 women and few men are also there, part of Mahila Mitra, community volunteers, giving their time, giving their services, giving their ear to the agonies of the women and girls and taking them to the respective service providers, and it is going like a moment. So, and it's being captured as one of the best practice even in the G20, C20 also. And it's being scaled up in Andhra Pradesh in 2019 to 1258 police stations, 1258 police stations, up from 21. So, we want to do such things even in Karnataka also, because where the community engagement and community-led actions are an alternative systems for criminal justice system which has to be taken up by the communities, and we request all the panelists to take ahead those initiatives, and we will approach you shortly how we can do it also. Thank you so much. Would you like to now?
So before we come to a close, I would like to thank all the people who made this event possible. First and foremost, I would like to thank our panelists for accepting our invitation and taking our time to inform and educate our audience on this pertinent issue. It was truly an honor for hearing to all of you. I would like to thank Dr. Keerthi, Mrs. Archana, Mr. Ramanuja from VMM for collaborating with us for this event. I would like to thank Mr. Madhu, Mr. Sachin from the IT team, Ms. Neha, Mr. Mahadev, Mr. Chandan, and Mr. Manish from the communications team, Mr. Shashidhar and Mr. Renuka from the facilities team for supporting us throughout. Lastly, I would like to thank our audience for taking the time to attend this event today. Thank you all. I would like to invite you all for tea and coffee outside. Hope you have a great afternoon. Lunch.
Yes. Yeah.